So as you're searching for cars on Turo, you may find different types of hosts out there. You might hear something like an all-star host or a power host. What is the difference between those, and does it really matter when you're booking a car? Today, I'm gonna go over all of it and help you make the best decision as far as what type of host you want to go with for your rental. So let's get into it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. So here we are, I'm in my Subaru Crosstrek, getting it ready for a rental here in a couple days. So today I wanted to go over some of the different types of hosts as you look for a vehicle on Turo, and being able to help you stay well informed as far as what the different types of hosts are that are out there, and if it's really worth it to book with a regular host, an all-star host, or a power host, and what really is the difference between the three. Now, there are going to be benefits to all of them, and I'm not going to talk about specifically how it benefits a host, but I do want to talk about how it benefits the guest, which is you if you're watching this video. So as I mentioned, there are three different tiers of hosts. One is the regular host, which would be either a newer host or someone that is not an all-star host for whatever particular reason. There are metrics that I will explain in the all-star host category that make you an all-star host. So there are ones that are just a basic host. Then there is the all-star host, which requires you to have met certain metrics, and I'll go over those with you. And then there is the power host. So the first one I want to talk about is the basic host, a regular host. What that person is somebody that is either new to the platform, has never hosted a car on Turo before, or maybe they have hosted a couple of times and they have not made this a regular enough occurrence as far as hosting the vehicle for them to become an all-star host. Sometimes there are also circumstances where people will have a lot of trips and they have not met the criteria to become an all-star host. So maybe you find somebody with thousands of trips, but yet they are not an all-star host. That is much more rare, but those circumstances may be needing a little bit more research before you look into those types of cars. And let me explain. Sometimes there are circumstances where people lose their all-star host status based on the metrics that are supposed to have been met. So let's say maybe you didn't commit to enough trips, or maybe you had a lot of under 5-star reviews. That can sometimes happen. And in those circumstances, Turo will remove the all-star host badge from that particular host, and they have to meet those metrics again in order to re-earn it back. So in those circumstances, if you find somebody that has 7 or 8 cars, doesn't yet have the all-star host badge, or they don't have it, then do a little bit of research and see if you see a lot of canceled trips, or if you see a lot of less than 5-star reviews. Any of those types of circumstances that may have caused this particular host to lose their all-star status. But as I mentioned, there are new hosts on the platform that will be in this same category, so don't mistake them for ones that have lost their all-star host badge. Those are people that are working to earn them, or maybe they are content with what they have. So that encompasses your basic host, or your newer host, or non-all-star host. Next, you get into all-star hosts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the categories that are supposed to be met in order to achieve all-star host status. And by covering all of these with you, this hopefully helps you understand that an all-star host is going to give you the expectation that you need as far as booking a vehicle. Now, I'm not telling you to not book with a non-all-star host. I don't want to say that, because we all were that way at some point in our career on Turo. But what I am saying is an all-star host is going to give you this experience if you've done the research that you need to do on this particular host. You're not seeing any new reviews that are bad. You're not seeing any red flags or concerns on their profile pages or on the vehicle listing pages. Then you probably will get a good experience out of that particular host. So the first metric is response rate, which basically means if we get sent a trip request, we are required to respond to it. We either accept it or we decline the trip. There are a lot of hosts that allow instant booking on their trips, which if that's the case, then we're automatically responding yes to those. But there are hosts out there that you have to request the trip, and then the host has to either accept or decline. That goes towards our response rate. So a host is required to respond to all trip requests and has to achieve a minimum percentage in order to achieve all-star host based on this metric. On the same lines of the response, there is also an expectation of an acceptance rate. So for the amount of trip requests that we are receiving, we have to accept a minimum amount in order to achieve all-star host. So for the acceptance rate, the metric that I talked about before, that's a 90% expectation. You have to respond to 90% of your trip requests that are being sent in, either accepting or declining. For the acceptance rate of those trip requests that you are getting in, you have to accept 95% of those requests. So it sounds confusing. So what are you saying? You need to respond to 90% of them, but you have to accept 95% of them. That's exactly what I mean, is 90% of the trips that are coming in, you have to respond to. 95% of those overall requests that you are responding to have to be accepts. There are 3 more to cover for the all-star host category. Next is commitment rate, which means if I accepted the trip, I am committing to your trip. I am not going to cancel the trip on you. You have to maintain a minimum of 95% commitment rate in order to be considered to be an all-star host. So that is a very important metric to meet as well. The next one is 5-star ratings. The expectation is that 90% of your trips that are rated have to be 5 stars. You cannot have less than 90% of your trips be a 5-star rating, or you will not be considered to be an all-star host. And the last metric is completed trips. So you have to have a minimum of 10 completed trips in the given review period in order to be considered to be an all-star host. So if I've done less than 10 trips, then I've no longer met that metric that's required in order for me to become an all-star host. So that covers the metrics needed in order to be considered to be an all-star host. The next is the power host. Now there is going to be no special badging or anything like that that's going to tell you that a particular host is a power host. The host is probably going to be telling you that they are a power host. Now the power host requirements are a little bit different from the all-star host requirements. And as I mentioned, there is no badging. So typically the host is going to be telling you that they are a power host. And there are going to be specific requirements that they have to meet. It's very simple in order to get this power host metric, but again, it's somebody with experience that's going to be achieving something like a power host. You have to meet all of the all-star host requirements. You have to have at least 4 active vehicles on the Turo platform within the last 365 days or a year, with at least 1 completed trip on each, and you have to earn more than $36,000 in the last 365 days. So if somebody tells you that they're a power host, then they have met those metrics in order to be considered to be one. Now, if somebody tells you that they're a power host and you don't see all-star host on their badging, then they may not actually be a power host themselves. So you might need to reconsider that particular host. Maybe they're being deceptive to you. So hopefully that explains a lot as far as the different types of hosts and which one you should consider when you are going to book a car on Turo, because it is very important for you to know the expectations that are going to be met based on the host that you are booking with. Now, the only one specifically that I have never worked with is the host that was an all-star host or maybe has multiple trips and has not earned the all-star host badge. I've booked with new hosts, I've booked with all-star hosts, I've booked with power hosts, and all of them deliver on expectations that I'm looking for. And a lot of that is due to simply the research that you need to do before you book these cars on Turo, so this way you are getting exactly the car and the trip that you would expect. So as I always say, do your research, make sure you're looking at all of the information that you need to look for before you go ahead and pull the trigger and book a car on Turo. But once you have all that information and you feel comfortable with the car that you're going with and the trip goes well, then you may not go back to those other rental car companies. And that's why I'm doing these videos for you all. Now that is going to do it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and please consider subscribing. If you like this kind of content and you like following the business, we're going to be doing some more content coming up pretty soon about the business itself and how we are doing. Be sure to stay tuned for that and make sure you hit that notification bell if you want to see more. If you're looking for a car in Jacksonville, make sure you visit AtchooRentals.com. We have everything from small compact cars to, we still have that minivan. It's out on a rental right now, and I love this Crosstrek. You definitely should try it.